going too fast. I'm taking 3.
Going for the St. Louis now.
Oh no!
Son of a bitch.
You get your 2?
Yeah.
Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Thotgor here, of course, and today we are going to take a look at a battle in the Neptune. Yes, like I said in previous video, I did recently purchase her, and she's a pretty great cruiser at tier 9. Typical British cruiser, only now at this point in the line, I mean, when he got to the Edinburgh at tier 8 in the British cruiser line, you know, it was really fast firing and really able to pump out the damage much more than, say, you got at the Fiji or the Leander, although those ships are still very, very good if you know how to play them properly. But once you got to the Neptune, things get a little more intense in terms of the damage that you're able to actually deal out, and what your damage totals might end up being there at the end. So we're going to have a pretty good game in the Neptune today. You'll notice I do have the radio location on. I run it on my Neptune, well, on my British cruisers only, basically. I made the mistake on the Rune, and I put it on the Rune Captain. Oh, that was terrible. I had to, you know, spend all the gold to retrain it, and I didn't do it during the discount. Clearly, that would have been too convenient. But I had to go and respec the Rune. I don't recommend putting it on the Rune. It's just a waste of points. But anyway, I do have it on the British cruisers. The reason for it is just the information that it provides me is very, very valuable, especially when I'm this lightly armored and this weak. Because a lot of what you do with the British cruisers is, you know, fight in those mid to close ranges. I mean, the Neptune is capable of stealth firing because she also does get a very nice range, and especially if you couple that with the module that increases the range ever so slightly, you do get some pretty good results. Now, I don't run, do I? No, I don't run that module on the Neptune, actually, with the increased range, because what I was afraid of, come to think of it, was the firing arcs. I didn't want to get too far out there and just have it just so ridiculous that I'm unable to hit anything and it's useless. I went with reload speed, I believe. Rate of fire increase, yes, potentially. But anyway, still, nice good range on the Neptune, so it does allow you to stealth fire. Another nice thing here on the Neptune is 10-kilometer range torpedoes. That is also pretty great, especially for defensive armament or even offensive armament, because with your smoke and your good concealment, and, you know, like I've been doing this early battle so far, is I'm able to work in pretty close to the enemies, get myself into a nice little position, pop my smoke, and then just remain invisible while I rain down death upon the enemy. And that is basically what you do want to try and do with your British cruisers. This is an ideal situation. Now, a few things you do need to keep in mind, obviously. I am sitting in smoke, so I have to expect, especially considering the enemy just capped the point in front of me, that there's most likely a destroyer or some enemy ship that's nearby, so I can expect someone to pop out maybe in front of me at any point in time, and yeah, it might ruin my day. Now, I do have acoustic sonar just for that purpose, but because, well, realistically, probably because I forgot and just never thought to use it at the time. But, you know, it would have been pretty decent to have that on right now, and it's something that you can do as well in your British cruisers, and I would recommend. Now, you have to judge the situation, because you don't want to use it all the time, because you'll find then that when a situation arises when you do need it, you don't have it, and that's very unfortunate. So raining down some shots there on the enemy Amagi off in the distance, doing a bit of damage. We can see some other enemies start popping up. We've got a Chapiev over there, and the Chapiev scared me, because radar, right? It's obvious. Now, Russian radar, what is it, 11.4 kilometers, maybe 11.6 kilometers. So basically, as long as you're 12 kilometers away from a Russian cruiser that has radar, you are going to be okay. But if you're within that 12 kilometers and the person does happen to, pop the old radar, it's not going to be a good day for you, especially if all of the other enemy ships start focusing in. Now, you do notice my smoke counter. I pointed out in the previous video as well, right? So it's giving me good information as to when my smoke is going to be gone. Now, because I just sat in the same smoke, I can expect the second puff to get rid of all of my smoke, and there we go, right? All the smoke gets out, and I have to move along. So we do see an allied Prince Eugen moving in here, and we do have an enemy North Carolina popping up as well. So we're going to potentially switch over to the North Carolina. I mean, we do have another enemy battleship there in the background that just popped up, sailing broadside, which is actually an excellent opportunity for your British cruisers to start doing a bunch of damage. And I think, what is it, a Montana and Iowa? One of those. I think it's a Montana. No, Iowa, because it only has the 3 turrets, right? Unless, of course, it's German. No. We'll go with battleship. It's a battleship sailing broadside. So I'm able to get my shells in there, rapid fire. We can see the reloads here that we're working with, like talking only a few seconds. What is that, like 3 seconds? Maybe a little less to get some shells down range. Now, again, you have to keep in mind your firing arcs, right? You do want to keep these in mind, and you always have to lead the target a lot more than you would think you maybe should lead the target. You definitely do want to lead a little more, just to make sure that you can do some consistent damage. But you can see, this is the way the British cruisers work. You're not going to get, especially when you're firing at a battleship like this, right? You're not going to always get these big, like, 5K salvos and whatnot, but because it's so consistent coming in, right? 2K here, 2K there, maybe 3K, 4K. It's just happening constantly, basically, that you do really start racking up the damage on the enemy ships. As long as you can get yourself into a position where we find ourselves in right now, where I'm able to basically sail in a straight line and not have any enemies firing at me right now, right? I'm back here enough that the enemies don't really want to focus on me. They're probably focused on my allied destroyer, maybe another cruiser there in front of me. But anyway, we managed to take down the enemy battleship, so perfect. Get ourselves a kill. You can see I'm no longer spotted, and I'm able to, use the good concealment of the ship just to get myself turned back around here so I can get myself into another position to pick off another enemy ship. Now, overall, if we're looking at the mini-map, we can see that my allies pushed on the east side of the map, and they have pushed beyond that, what is that, the D point, and they're now making their way to the north. Now, over here on the west, we are playing the defense. It's a bit of a heavy defense, I'll give it that, but I wasn't willing to leave as of yet. You can see I'm pinging the map, though, because we do see an enemy cruiser attempting to come down the middle, so we need to be aware of this, right? Make sure that my allies know. I mean, if I have to, I'll go over there and deal with it, but right now I do have some allies in between me and the channel who hopefully maybe will be able to deal with that player. Plus, if the enemy cruiser does decide to come down the channel, maybe he'll come out of the channel broadside, and at that point we can just, destroy the player, delete him. It would be perfect. We do see an enemy, I think, it's a battleship, maybe an American battleship. Anyway, in the background, going bow on. This still isn't too big of an issue for the British cruisers with the AP rounds. As long as you're lobbing them in and they're coming through. Penetrating the deck, I forget what it's called, whatever. You're penetrating through the deck of the ship. That armor is generally a lot lower than what you find on the side of the ship, for example. And you can, get some good shots in there and do a bit of damage fairly consistently. We put a bit of shots into the enemy cruiser there off in the distance, but this enemy battleship is just coming in pretty quick, so we do want to start focusing the player down, right? As well, keeping in mind that we do have torpedoes. It's an enemy Iowa, so I don't have to be concerned about radar. So we're going to launch off some torpedoes. Hopefully those will hit the enemy battleship. 10 kilometers, and again you get good quantity of them. 2 launchers on each side of the ship, launching 4 torpedoes each. So comparable right now at tier 9 with Japanese torpedoes. Same range. Probably maybe differences in overall damage and whatnot. But definitely on the British cruisers, the torpedo launchers are mounted on the side of the ship, so it makes it a lot easier to actually use them. Whereas if you recall in the Japanese ships, they are mounted on the stern of the ship, so they're really, more defensive, or you got to fire them from the stern and take that into account when you're setting up your ambushes. So we're going to switch over to the enemy Amagi here and start putting some shots into this player. You can see we do still have a bit of time left on our smoke. I was getting a little edgy sitting in the smoke for this long because I knew that there was probably some other enemy ships that I'm not, don't see. There's an enemy destroyer somewhere around. People have torpedoes, so I was a little concerned about actually getting hit with torpedoes. So yeah, I almost went into the smoke, but decided, just before I become sighted, to stop and go into reverse and get back into the smoke for a little while longer anyway. So we're making our way back into the smoke and just continuing to pump shells into this enemy Amagi. You can see it's doing pretty decently. We're at 131,000 damage now, which is not too shabby at all. The game is still relatively early, so we definitely do have the potential here to, start racking up a whole lot more damage. Now our smoke is gone. I was a little slow on the draw and actually getting out of here, so I am trying to pull away now, and I do see another enemy, or what is that? Yeah, an enemy Atlanta pop up, and I want to take this Atlanta down. Atlantas are dangerous in all respects. If you see a Flint as well, those are dangerous. You need to deal with them if you can safely, and that is exactly what I'm trying to do with this enemy Atlanta over there. Just get the player gone. We don't need any of that ruining our day. We can see an enemy battleship there off in the distance as well. It's basically sailing broadside onto us, so we are going to be able to get a bit of shots into the player and hopefully do a bit more damage as well. And you can see, in terms of target selection, I know that, I'm not really finishing off anyone, but people have been moving out of my range and, not presenting the best shots towards me. So I've basically been picking my shots as best as I can and trying to focus on enemy ships that are always giving me a broadside to get the most out of every salvo that I'm putting out there. It's pretty easy to do that with a British cruiser because of the rate of fire that you have, and especially here, at the Neptune, the range that we have, coupled with that rate of fire. But generally, with every ship, it's not necessarily a good idea to do that, because there is a massive benefit to focusing down enemy players, especially, if you're in a Russian cruiser, for example, firing your high explosive, right? You can just fire that high explosive at that enemy ship until it burns to the bottom of the sea at any angle that ship presents you. With the AP rounds, you can't. Even though these British AP rounds are better than other AP rounds, you still do want to, pick your shots as best you can when possible. Now, I would still say, if advantageous to do so, still take your shots off at bow on targets, like we talked about earlier in the video. Just don't expect to do that much damage. You really have to get those deck penetrating shells, lobbing those shells onto the top deck and having it penetrate there to get any sort of damage in that situation. So overall, we're still doing pretty decently. My team is now capping the western point, which is perfect. My team over there on the eastern side is still duking it out. I mean, you can see that they've slowly worked their way to the northern point, being very cautious, and there's something to be said about being cautious, especially if you have the time to afford to be cautious, right? Because keep in mind, we made some early moves in this game, and once you have the points, nothing says that you always have to push beyond them, right? You do want to kind of take control of the line that you've formed against the enemy, and once you have control of that, then push beyond it is usually the best call, because then you can control what's going to happen with the enemies, and hopefully as well take the enemies down, which is what we're attempting to do with the enemy Iowa there off in the distance. Moving into the cap, which is great. I'm going to get myself some juicy cap points, which is always fantastic. Sitting on about 155,000 damage now, which is not too bad. You can see, unfortunately for the enemy carrier there off in the distance, that player has decided to ground himself. Well, I say decided. I mean, I can't be mean. I always ground myself constantly. You see it in almost every video. In fact, this video is one of the rare ones where I haven't grounded myself. But anyway, we do manage to finish off the enemy Iowa, which is not too bad at all. You can see the enemy Amagi is in a turn trying to get out of here, and basically so are all of the other enemy ships. The enemy Amagi is the ship that's in my range right now, so I'm just going to start pumping shells into that player. I do come to a stop, and I do decide to pop my smoke. I mean, the enemies only have 4 ships remaining, 3 of which I can see in front of me now, and the 4th one is an enemy destroyer. Not 100% sure where the enemy destroyer is, so it is still risky to do this, right? Because at any point in time, the enemy destroyer could just come out of anywhere, because I don't know where the player is, and tort me in my smoke, and it is a little unnerving. Now, there is the benefit of the radio location, and this is why, again, you know, I like having the radio location on my Captain British cruisers. But you do need to keep in mind that this radio location is not telling me where any particular one ship is. It's telling me where the closest enemy ship is to me, and it tells me that it's over here. Now, you might think that it's the Amagi. It could be the Amagi, but I don't know it's the Amagi. It could also be an enemy destroyer that's in between me and the enemy Amagi. You need to keep this in mind when you have the radio detection. Anyway, we don't get to figure out if that is the case. Doesn't matter. Victory is ours. Well done. Good times had by all. 410,000 credits earned, 7,200 experience. Now, I do have the experience camo on, so keep that in mind. 174,000 damage dealt, which is not too bad. Ended up with 2 kills in the Citadel, but really, the 174,000 damage was, I thought, you know, pretty decent for a, well, more along the lines of what I was expecting out of the British cruisers, because I know that they are capable of a whole bunch of damage. It's just a matter of getting yourself into a position where you can deal that much damage. When all said and done, 230,000 credits is what I end up walking away with, but a lot of decent experience, which is good because I do have the credits for the Minotaur. I just need to research and purchase her, and yeah, that's a lot of experience, I know, considering I'm going to grind my way there, but whatever. Anyway, that is the end of today's video. I do hope you guys enjoyed it. Remember to leave any comments you have for me in the video comment section below. Remember to hit the old like button if you did like today's video. Hit subscribe if you are not a subscriber. And as always, I do hope you enjoy the rest of your day.